Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Chigwell School Remote Speech Day and Prize Giving 2020.
Good afternoon and welcome to our virtual speech day. On behalf of the governing body and the headmaster, we welcome you all. And I also welcome Rachel Lund and the head of school. When I became chair of the governors last year, my husband quipped that I'd condemned him forevermore to wearing a shirt and tie in the marquee at speech day. But imagine we're in that marquee now. We've just walked in to the sound of the school big band, and actually one advantage of being remote is that they had threatened to walk us in this year to the Imperial March from Star Wars if we didn't say nice things about them. Mr. Rabbit is running round at the back of the marquee trying to find chairs for latecomers. Mr. Gower and Miss Savage are handing out water from barrels in case anyone faints. Grandparents have forgotten their reading glasses and so are using their programme to fan themselves. There are members of Year 8 who've already slipped out the back and are at the strawberries and cream. Some of the middle six have hair appointments and are quite anxious to get onto them, being ready for this evening's prom. And the biggest problem that most of you have is hoping that I and the headmaster don't go on so long that you miss the beginning of the England match in the Euros this afternoon. What would we give now, actually, to be back in that reality? Who would have imagined the world that we're in today? And that is why traditions, that is why Speech Day is so important. It provides an anchor, familiarity, comfort. Today is a celebration. It's a celebration of our prize winners and their achievements. And it's also a celebration of our community. And it's that community that has seen us through the storm of the last few months. Many Chigwell families have been affected terribly by COVID-19. Some have lost family members, and indeed, I've lost my own mum from COVID in April. Others have been separated from loved ones or have lost work or income. Never has our motto, find a way or make a way, been so apt. In order to see the charity, and let's not forget it is a charity, through this period financially, and to be able to continue to provide the very best education that we can to every child from reception to sixth form, the headmaster, the bursar, and all the staff have had to work harder than ever, and I can tell you I've personally witnessed this. We're aware that this is true of parents too, both in their professional lives and in supporting their children. We've had to be creative, ingenious, adaptable. And like all crises, there is a legacy, and some of these developments will have long-lasting benefit. Crisis is a time for leadership. A good leader does what is popular. A great leader sometimes also has to do what isn't. Some of the measures required and some of the decisions that we've had to take were not easy, and I pay respect to Mr. Punt for the way in which he has sailed the ship. And I also thank the bursar because doing what is right and possible is in the interests of not just the here and now, but of the future too. I don't think the headmaster or the bursar have taken a single day off since this crisis began. I thank the families who've contributed to the bursary fund, and from here we move on. So it's right that all of us, governors, parents and staff, do not look on our relationship with Chigwell School as transactional, but rather as a relationship that will last years and in some cases decades. And so like Janice, we look forward as well as back. Our future is exciting and it's ambitious. It is important that we restore and we recover, and that we show our children that we've been scared and confused by the virus too, but that it is possible to look forward with optimism and excitement. When I became chair, the headmaster and I spent a good deal of time considering the school's values, and our thoughts were shared with governors, staff, parents and groups of students. We took those values from them and created a strategy for the next decade, leading to our quad centenary in 2029. Our values, in summary, are ambition and innovation. We want our pupils to excel. As well as providing knowledge, we wish to instil in each child a curiosity to learn and a lifelong love of learning so that they achieve. We wish them to be innovators, creators, and pillars of their communities. Community and nurture, it's a word you'll hear us say often. We're a Christian foundation, and because of that, we're inclusive, welcoming, and supportive. Equality is in our DNA. We want our Chigwell students, parents, and staff to be part of a family that lasts a lifetime and is thought of fondly as safe and nurturing. We want to reach out further and develop our bursary programme so that we can include children whose families have not previously had access to private education. Heritage. We are proud of our school's history and our traditions, but we also look to the future. Standing in Chigwell's grounds, one could stand by a building that is 400 years old, look over the greenness of the countryside to the greatest trading centre in the world. These pictures represent the very ethos of Chigwell, rooted in tradition and nature, but looking out to the world and the future, a modern outlook that is inclusive. So what are we doing to secure these values for the long term? How do we ensure that they are at the heart of what we do now and how we do it? For the last 2 years, we've been consulting with parents, present and past, gaining useful feedback on how we might make long-term investment in your children's future and your grandchildren's ongoing education. These exciting plans are for our Chigwell families, but also for the Chigwell community as a whole. There are some exciting initiatives that we'd like to tell you about today. But before I begin, I want to emphasise 2 things. And the first is each of these has been developed in the years leading up to when COVID took effect. Their progress will, of course, be subject to affordability. This is not short-term expenditure, it's long-term investment in your children and grandchildren's ongoing education. And secondly, we are, as a board, passionate about the environment. Everything we do will be seen through that lens and the wonderful green space in which we occupy. So first, the IT curriculum. Mr. Punt will tell you more. But looking to the future, IT and technology will be a key part of our curriculum. Computer science has been introduced at GCSE and the new course began at the start of June. We hope that our part of our master planning will allow us in the future to develop a technology suite in the heart of the campus, as well as an expanded music school. The events of recent weeks in the United States and across the world has demonstrated how important it is that schools take opportunities across the curriculum to teach what racism is, its causes, unconscious bias, and that racism and prejudice is wrong. Governors and the headmaster have made refreshed commitment this week to review the curriculum and our whole school approach to ensure that the school takes on board and teaches those messages. That reflection and refreshed understanding and learning will include pupils of all ages, governors and staff. We are continually looking at evolving the curriculum to ensure that pupils are well prepared for university in our rapidly changing world. 3G pitch. This was procured before the lockdown, but is now in construction. The 3G all-weather football pitch is a facility the community was crying out for. Grassroots football involves thousands of local boys and girls and adults, and yet there are only a handful of pitches in the vicinity. Many of the matches which would have been played here at Chigwell this year were cancelled through rain. This facility will be open to all. Sports hall. To support and reflect the importance of the school's co-curricular strengths in the arts, sport and outdoor pursuits, we're delighted to tell you that plans are well advanced for the design and construction of a new sports centre at the heart of our campus. We hope to provide facilities that pupils require and deserve while supporting the wider Chigwell community. We aim to proceed to a formal planning application this year, but the images you can see behind on the screen, the architect's drawings and flyover, including an indoor swimming pool, separate audio space, indoor climbing wall, a large sports hall will cater for hockey, netball, badminton and cricket. The hall will have retractable seating so that it can convert to a 1,000-seater auditorium for music and lectures. Our logo. We spent a good deal of time modernising our logo and intend to launch this with a new website in the autumn. And I'm going to pause for a couple of minutes to show you a video that illustrates our branding. These are our images, which have been the subject of extensive and detailed consultation. It's not intended that parents will have to buy a new uniform. We will introduce the changes gradually. However, the new colour palette and cleaner digital-friendly lines will allow a lot of opportunity to design kit that stands out and a unique modern brand that is rooted in tradition too. Our crest remains, but we also have a new mark. You will see that we have retained the mitre, the year 1629 features, because it is not just a nod to our history, but also reminds us the period to our quadcentenary in 2029. The ribbon represents nurture and achievement. Our motto is prominent, find a way or make a way, which was first coined by Hannibal as he led his elephants over the Pyrenees towards Rome. At the heart of the designs, we're inspired by the foundations of the school. The leaded stained glass windows of our chapel are representative of the supportive structure and inclusiveness that holds our community together. And so I leave you again on that word, community.
Ladies and gentlemen, governors, pupils, and indeed Rachel Lund, guest of honour, welcome to the Chigwell Speech Day 2020. This is obviously a very different speech day, but even in these circumstances, we would like to celebrate the many successes of the last year at the school, but I'm under strict instructions not to talk for too long. We're delighted to have Rachel with us today. She's a graduate of Oxford University, where she studied PPE, an economist, data scientist, and former head of insight and analytics at the British Retail Consortium. A traveller and runner, an ex-rower, and an old Chigwellian. In the 2004 yearbook, the paragraph describing Rachel begins, "From day one, we all knew Rachel would become head of school, a shrewd and accurate prediction." She has always been involved in everything, as well as being a smart cookie. Rachel, thank you for being with us this afternoon as our guest of honour, even though it's not in the marquee as normal. I would also like to welcome Ms. Ros Sorelli, who took over as Chair of Governors last term. Ros, who is Head of Strategy at the law firm Sharp Pritchard, graduate of Cambridge University and parent, leads the board, and she and I work very closely together. Ros took up her position at a time when the waters for all schools were unexpectedly choppy, and I've been very grateful for the support of her and all the governors who continue to work very hard on behalf of the school, ultimately to ensure that Chigwell pupils are well placed to thrive in the world and to make it just that bit better. Particularly following the recent events in the US and across the world, we're beginning to review everything we do at Chigwell to ensure that we impress upon pupils that racism, prejudice and inequality was and is wrong, and that we all have a responsibility to ensure that the world is kinder for all. Last year in my speech, I thanked Susie Alliker for her wise and highly successful leadership of the board through a long period in which the school has grown, developed and flourished. Thank you once again, Susie, and we are very pleased that you are continuing as a governor. I'd also like to thank all Chigwell families for all their support through this year. Who would have thought that we would experience anything quite like it? We've received many kind messages thanking staff for all that they've been doing, and those messages have meant a great deal to us all. Last week, one family gave me a picture with two Chigwell crests joined by a rainbow, above which is this caption: "When the world stayed apart, we all stayed together." I sincerely hope that although we have all been physically apart for much of the last term, the innovative programmes that staff have put together to continue pupils' education have kept the strong Chigwell community connected. And I'm pleased that the approach developed here has been adopted elsewhere. As always at this time of year, sadly we say goodbye to members of staff who are leaving. Miss Jessica Bonner joined us as a pre-prep teacher in September 2015, initially as a maternity cover teacher. Such was Miss Bonner's hard work and commitment. When we had the opportunity to make her appointment permanent, we did. And for 5 years, Jessica has worked to bring the very best out of the children in her classes. Sadly for us, but happily for Jessica, she moves to be with her fiancé. Oxfordshire's gain is Chigwell's loss. Stay in touch, Miss Bonner, and thank you for everything you have done here. In 1997, Mr. Simon Wilson arrived as a new teacher of biology and chemistry, and so began a career that would include coordinating Year 7 and 8 science, being assistant housemaster before becoming assistant director of studies. First and foremost, Simon is a first-rate, committed teacher. No surprise that he was made principal examiner for biology, which has seen him train teachers across the world. Simon leaves us for somewhere slightly closer to home, Norwich School, where he will be head of biology. And we thank him for everything he has done here so diligently for the last 23 years and wish him every success in his new role. Last summer's GCSE results were amongst our very best ever. And once again, leavers gained places at some of the best universities in the UK and North America. That's important, and we continue to push pupils to achieve their best. There's a danger that we only remember part of this year and not the excellent co-curricular successes that took place before lockdown. You'll have your own personal favourites, including the wide variety of drama, debating and public speaking across the school, not forgetting the broad range of musical opportunities, some of which were showcased at Cadogan Hall, and the rich and ever-growing programme of sport for boys and girls. This brings me to Mr. Ron Spicer, who came to Chigwell in 2006, initially as a part-time teacher of economics, having worked for a quarter of a century in further education. Within a year, his role had become full-time and head of department, and during this period, numbers taking the subject at A-level grew. More recently, Ron has returned to a part-time role, but his commitment to the wider life of the school has never reduced. Always ready to accompany a trip and a committed manager of the second 11 with inspirational half-time talks that would put any Premiership manager to shame, Ron has been a thoroughly positive, loyal teacher and colleague. We'll miss you, Ron, but wish you a long and happy retirement. I would like to thank all the staff who have worked so hard this year, especially since the beginning of lockdown. Teaching at Chigwell has not stopped. Pupils, although not in school, have worked hard, and I was very proud that we were able to bring back 320 pupils in upper 2 and below, 95% of those year groups. Whilst pupils have shown remarkable resilience and independence, supported by parents, staff have had to work differently, teaching and support staff, and I'm very grateful to their dedication to ensuring that pupils here have not suffered in terms of education now and will be well prepared for public exams in 2021. A Chigwell education should prepare leavers to lead happy, successful lives in which they leave a positive mark on the world. And at this point, I should mention the DT department, who work so hard to produce over 1,000 protective visors for a whole variety of organisations in the local community. There's someone who deserves a final mention, who has committed the majority of his life to Chigwell, and that is Dr. Peter Clayton. The world, and indeed the school, was a different place when he arrived in 1975, and 4.5 decades later, we must thank Peter for everything he has contributed to the school. His roles have included being a teacher of physics and IT, head of physics, director of IT, network manager, ICT systems manager, chair of the ICT committee, timetable manager, database manager. Thoroughly devoted, kind and supportive colleague, a clever physicist and a devout and decent man. Quietly and calmly, Peter has helped move the school forwards, always looking to use technology helpfully and always ready to help others. You thoroughly deserve a long and fulfilling retirement, Peter, with Claire and your grandchildren. Thank you for everything you have done here, and we will miss you. Thank you for being with us for this different version of Speech Day. To those pupils who are leaving, you have been a superb bunch. We're very proud of you, we will miss you, and we wish you every future success and happiness, and as soon as we can, we'll have an event to say goodbye and thank you in person. Joseph has been an excellent head of school, and thank you to him and Nina and the whole prefect team for everything you have done to assist the running of the school, to act as role models and to support other pupils. We look forward to working with Zach and Kaya, who are next year's head of school and head girl. I hope you all have a happy and healthy summer. Please stay in touch. This has been another busy year for everyone, and in answer to the original instruction, I'm going to quote Mark Twain, well, more or less. I would have made it shorter, but I didn't have the time. However, to close, if pupils are reading over the summer, some may choose to read Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. And if they do, they'll come across the following. The world is indeed full of peril, and in it there are many dark places. But still there is much that is fair, and though in all lands love is mingled with grief, it grows perhaps the greater. Long may love, kindness, support, encouragement, and the desire to make things better thrive across the Chigwell community, so that we navigate the current challenges successfully together. Thank you.
Thank you and good afternoon. When I was asked to come back to Chigwell by the headmaster to talk to you about what I have done since leaving, my immediate reaction was to think, well, it hasn't actually been that long. So thankfully for you all, this is going to be a pretty short speech. However, when I sat down, I realised that it's actually been almost 23 years since my first day as a member of the first intake of girls into the third form. A memorable day only because I managed to miss the school bus, eventually arriving an hour later in floods of tears, worried that this was a portent of things to come. Luckily, things got better from there, and I made it through to the middle six and my final speech day in 2004, well before most of Chigwell's current pupils were even born. It's a scary thought, but school does not feel like it was that long ago. But over the past 16 years, I've been to university twice, taken 2 gap years, had 6 different jobs, and stood in a cowpat live on national TV. And it would be impossible for anyone not to recognise that their time at school has had an impact on their experience. And I am no exception in this regard. After a gap year, I went up to Oxford to read politics, philosophy and economics. Not because I had any particular political ambitions, but because I was so undecided about what to do. I thought doing 3 subjects sounded better than doing just one. And I enjoyed my time at university very much. But sorry to say, I was a pretty undistinguished scholar. To the irritation of my tutors, I spent far too much time doing sport, a habit I blame Chigwell for. I initially joined the modern university pentathlon team at the university, which was great fun, and a big change from Mr. Bowden's hockey regime. However, it turned out I was particularly bad at the shooting part, which was surprising given that I had spent a reasonable amount of time at Chigwell's shooting range using Tipp-Ex and teddy bears as targets before the club was finally closed in the late 90s. But what really sucked me in was rowing. Now, I have neither the height nor the muscle mass to be naturally suited to it as a sport. But I do believe that having to run through fields wearing nothing more than hot pants and a vest in the middle of winter twice a year in the name of house cross country bred the required masochistic instincts in me. By my second year at university, I was getting up at 5:30 a.m. most mornings and spending more than 30 hours a week training in preparation to take on Cambridge in the women's lightweight boat race. Eventually, luckily, we won, but I swore I'd never train that hard again and promised my tutors I'd do more work for finals. However, I did later in life join the Lee Rowing Club close to here and get sucked back into rowing 10 times a week, this time around a job. And eventually I made an appearance for England at the home country's regatta before retiring into long distance running, which, weird as it sounds, actually takes up far less of your time. After leaving Oxford, I joined the Civil Service Fast Stream programme for economists. By choice, I ended up working on the UK's first carbon budget for an organisation called the Committee on Climate Change, who are still doing great work today. However, one of my responsibilities as the most junior member of the team was to pick up what were known as development opportunities, i.e. things no one else wanted to do. And one day, the chief executive of our organisation had accidentally agreed to meet 2 guys claiming to have invented a perpetual motion machine powered by combustion. When my boss realised his mistake in making the invite, I was instructed to dismiss them on his behalf. Luckily, remembering my chemistry teacher, Mr. Flory's parting advice to me, that whatever you do, don't forget your chemistry, and his quite unforgettable lesson on combustion, which concluded with an evacuation of the science block after he burnt crude oil underneath the fire alarm, I managed to explain, complete with hydrocarbon diagrams, why they couldn't possibly have invented a perpetual motion machine. So you see, even the things you learn in subjects you don't pursue may come in handy one day. Having a background in lots of subjects also held me in good stead for the jobs I had in consulting after leaving the civil service. One day I'd be writing a report on whether the European single currency would disintegrate, the next whether high-speed rail was good value for money, and the next day forecasting demand for toilets. You would be astonished how far Wikipedia and GCSE biology will get you in convincing clients you really know what you're talking about. I eventually decided to take a step away from consulting, as the hours were unpredictable, albeit fun, and it was interfering with my training. So I took a role with an organisation that represents retailers. leading their data collection and analysis team. Now, I'm not a big fan of shopping. However, looking at people through the lens of what they buy is fascinating. I mean, what part of the human spirit is it that leads a plastic unicorn which excretes glittery slime to become the most popular Christmas gift? I have no idea. However, one of the more fun and challenging things I got to do in this job was to go on the BBC News occasionally. Sometimes to give a serious view on the market, but more often than not to discuss a matter of trivial importance that could cross the day's editor's mind, such as a national shortage of pink flamingos, and paddling pools, or the outrage of higher asparagus prices that we were about to face. Now, I wasn't hired to go on TV, but I happened to volunteer one day to fill in the slot when there was no one senior enough in the office to veto the idea. And luckily, they let me do it again. And one day a friend asked me why I was worried about completely embarrassing myself by going on TV. And the truth is, I had that fear and I still have that fear. But I'd had plenty of practice getting over it, not least in my last year at Chigwell, where, as head of school, every Monday morning I had to shout over the noise of the whole school to tell them to be quiet. The problem was that I did not have the baritone voice of all of my male predecessors for the previous decade, and I struggled to be heard. It became mortifying, and I came to dread Monday mornings. "Don't worry," said Mr. Marchant to me. "Mrs. Thatcher had the same trouble," which I'm sure was meant as a compliment. Luckily, some very enterprising fellow prefects eventually proposed a solution of using the gong from the music school to get everyone's attention, which certainly eased my pain a bit, but did get quite a few laughs. My biggest takeaway from this experience was that actually you have to learn to laugh at your failings, and that your weaknesses and your embarrassments are sometimes the things that earn you respect from other people. Today, I'm just at the end of my second gap year, having done my time working retail and motivated by a desire to travel again, to explore my interest in languages and take my career in a slightly different direction. I took some time out to explore South America and Europe, and interestingly, to rekindle an old school friendship over some piranha fishing in the Peruvian Amazon. I'm now embarking on a new journey, freelancing as a data scientist. I'm not entirely sure where it will lead, but the one thing I've learned since leaving Chigwell, because I used to be terribly worried about making mistakes, is that if you don't open yourself up to failure or stick to only doing the things that you're already good at, you'll never give yourself the chance to succeed. And one of my favourite poems, written by Jorge Luis Borges, towards the end of his life, starts with the lines, "Si pudiera vivir nuevamente mi vida, en la próxima trataría de cometer más errores," which translated means, if I could live life again, I would try to make some more mistakes. So on that note, I would like to wish this year's departing middle sixth and other students leaving the best of luck for the future, and to make sure you find plenty of time to make plenty of mistakes, whatever life throws your way.
Good afternoon, ladies, gentlemen, Rachel Lund, headmaster and governors. I say good afternoon, but in this virtual arrangement, you could be viewing this at any time of the day or night, or choosing to avoid it completely. Thank you, Rachel, for coming to speak to us today. We have a bouquet of flowers for you to show our gratitude. This is all very strange and not at all what I imagined in the early days as head of school, when I was nervously anticipating this speech. My thanks go to the technical team for making this possible. This has been a year for Chigwell School hitting the headlines. Old Chigwellian Henry Bird appeared as a contestant on the Great British Bake Off, reaching week 8. And OC John Bond was one of the elite pilots and synchro leader of the Red Arrows for the flypast over London on VE Day. Most notably, however, our headmaster's wife and Chigwell School Development Officer, Mrs. Gillian Punt, was awarded a British Empire Medal in the Queen's Birthday Honours List for her fundraising endeavours. She's raised over £600,000 in 2 decades by taking part and organising entries into the London and Royal Parks marathons, amongst other initiatives. Huge congratulations for the funds raised for her cancer research and other charities, and in being given this very well-deserved recognition. The cancellation of GCSE and A-level exams was a huge shock. So much hard work put in by the students and teaching staff over the last 2 years, and with the last push to the final hurdle of the exams to overcome, and then nothing. Whether disappointed or relieved, I think all those affected will agree that they were left reeling with a suddenly no sense of purpose. The school has been outstanding in its support during this period of uncertainty, for which we are very grateful. Students in Year 13 have had the added disappointment of being unable to celebrate the end of their school days in the usual way. Hopefully, the time will come in the not too distant future when we can mark the occasion properly. Special thanks to Nina McCausland, our head girl, for all her help and support, without which everything may well have dissolved into chaos. Many thanks also to all the prefects for ensuring the smooth running of daily life at the school. Thanks and congratulations must go to everyone at the school who has worked so hard to ensure that teaching could continue to be delivered during lockdown, whether at school or remotely, and also for delivering all the extracurricular communications and services that are part of school life. Well done to all the students who have embraced this very strange arrangement. Of course, we must not forget the parents who have been thrust into the world of homeschooling and all the challenges that it presents. On behalf of the Middle Sixth, I would like to give a special thanks to Mr. Koppel and Miss Darkin for helping us with the transition from school to the challenges ahead. A very special mention to Dr. Clayton, who has been a member of the Chigwell community for 45 years. Other special mentions to Mr. Wilson and Mr. Spicer, who are also leaving us. I wish them very well in the future. I have often been told by people that have left the school that they miss it and regret not cherishing their time whilst they were still here. In considering what to say, it has given me an opportunity to reflect on the 11 years I have spent at Chigwell. I have been privileged to share my time with the most amazing year group and thoroughly enjoyed every moment. For those of you continuing here next year, work hard, embrace every opportunity, but most of all, enjoy it. Thank you.
Thanks again to Rachel, the headmaster, and Joseph for their speeches. I'd like to also just add my final thanks to my fellow governors for all their support, and to Susie in particular for all her mentoring as I got used to being chairman of the governors. Finally, I wish you all a really wonderful summer and hope we're all together again in September. Thank you.